Now it's working. We have slightly modified the title of the presentation because we thought maybe it's a bit too harsh to go open versus closed, but be more focusing on openness in closed science. And closed science means like any kind of these formats, for example, that we have been just checking on, like an article published in Studies in Higher Education is first of all a closed article, because for somebody else to access it, you have to pay, or your university have to pay for it. So it's good when you're at a rich university or a high-ranking research university, so you have access to a lot of articles. So science for you is far more open, although in its closed setting, than for when you are at a poorer university that cannot afford all these journal subscriptions, book subscriptions, and so on. So these days, of course, we don't rely, like it used to be the library, how well equipped is the library. In case you were wondering, I just got irritated because you now are in a sidebar, and I noticed that I want to talk to the audience. That's why I was looking always at the side. I will try to avoid these twitches. First point in learning to do online presentations there. In the presentation, like we have more or less two parts. The first part will be a presentation where we'll see something in general about the communication of knowledge and especially, of course, scientific communication. Then we go towards the article publishing issues, and also quickly touch upon other options than just publishing in a journal. Of course, I'm always very happy to receive high quality manuscripts submitted to Studies in Higher Education. So I would encourage you to do that as well. But we also have some open access aspects to it before we get then to the content of articles. And as articles are normally quite long, that's why we decided to focus on abstracts, because abstracts are the article in short there. And I will also tell you more about why the abstract is an important piece of your article content presentation. So you have to upscale what we discuss on the abstract then to your articles. I can provide you, or I will send it to Maria Jose, a PDF also where there is some more on how to structure an article. It's a presentation that was prepared by our colleague Christiane Rittgerott, who is working in Inter, supporting our publication business, because we are we have to do that as a research institute. And so you can have a look at this, and we can skip that part because otherwise it gets too much to talk about. And then in the end, I will talk a little bit about editorial practices, so that you get an idea how the closed communication and publishing industry is working, because as you then will see, there is a big industrial part to it. Like last year, Studies in Higher Education received more than 1,300 manuscripts. Like in March, I've been doing a review of an article every day. And we're an editor-in-chief and 4 associate editors. So this is quite some workload and we have to rationalize, and that's why it's interesting for you to maybe get an idea and a glimpse on what are editorial practices. In the second part of the workshop, we will first do some general discussions of some anonymous abstracts which I selected, and then I want to applaud to those three that were courageous enough to submit an abstract until 9 o'clock this morning, and then after this practice we will do some collegial constructive feedback on these abstracts, so that we appreciate their courage by giving them good feedback, so that they can work on the abstract, and maybe this helps to improve their then the publication options of that article on the long run. And as you see, we don't have a very tight schedule, so we will have breaks, and I'll be flexible with this. And we I want to do, you know, after like 45 minutes listening to somebody, you get tired. So we will do a 15 minutes break where you can get some air, eat something to be strong enough for the second part, and then it depends on how long the second part lasts if we have another break, but I think we might not need it. As I said before, but I want to emphasize it once more, use the comment function of Zoom, so that you can raise issues, ask questions, or share your thoughts. Isabel is on that track, and I will will have a break like after about every 5 minutes of presentation. I hope you're fine with my English. In case you really have problems understanding, we have very capable English, Spanish translators in our group. Please raise your hand and we will facilitate that. As I said, we're not in a rush, and it's important that that everybody can participate. So now, prepared some drinks sometimes, otherwise, so that I don't run dry and can keep talking. So before I start, I want to do a little bit of a disclaimer that I called it, I might hurt your feelings. And this is just based that we're now in Chile for 2 months, and we know that Chilean discussion culture and feedback culture is quite different to the feedback and discussion culture in Germany. So in Germany, we have a very direct discussion culture. And we also say very often more directly than we should when something is wrong, although we mean that we want to constructively criticize something and provide input. So you have to forgive me there, and I try to, although I'm aware of these cultural differences, I'm very much stuck in the German communication practice. So I might hurt your feelings. Don't take it personal, and by staying, you agree that I'm allowed to hurt you a little bit. And I'm sure, be assured, I don't do it on purpose. But this is just something that I want to say, because also, like if we then think about what we do with communication in general, communication in general is culturally very different. Like differences of language, you communicate, like languages have different structures, like Spanish is far more lively, German is a little bit harsh, English is somewhere in between. We have very clear cultural ideas how a written text should look like, starting from a letter addressing people, saying hello dear somebody, and then we also say, we ask, okay, I hope you're well, and we say goodbye. But of course with an academic paper, it should have a title, it should have the abstract, and so on. So there are also commonalities, but still you might we are filling them differently. And then, of course, we have any kinds of signs and symbols that are probably more culturally transversally understandable, but also here the Chilean understands some symbols a German does not understand because I'm lacking the cultural background knowledge. I have missed the event, whatever. So when we talk about the publication issues, we're not talking about like communication between subjects, but it's more between an object. You read the paper, and in a way, the paper is via the paper, the author is talking to you or the author. So it's a one-way communication, and a very specific one-way communication where you cannot react like this. Of course, you can write a counter article or challenge the ideas, send an email to the person saying, I like this, I like that. But it's a very specific way of communicating. And this specific way of communicating, of course, is it varies between if you like write a book where you have a lot of space, where the expectations are different. You want to have a clear theory section with very detailed discussion of a part. You cannot have such a detailed theory discussion in an article in an edited book because the format is shorter. You have less space. But still, it's a more open space. It's not as standardized and has such strong norms as then probably the most standardized communication form we have with a journal article. And the norms of a journal article, some of them are clearly communicated. You can go to a journal's website, you read the editorial policy, it has all the standards, maximum limit of words, and so on and so forth. So these are of course the norms that you can read if it's peer reviewed or not, if it's open peer review, single or double blind peer review. Double blind means I'm sure you know, but just to make sure that neither the reviewer is known nor the author is known. Single blind means that the reviewer knows who the authors are. Like for instance, Scientometric is one of the few journals that has that practice. But we don't know who is reviewing our article. And these are just the explicit norms. And then of course, there are tons of implicit norms, which you get to know. This very much depends on, for instance, your supervisors that tell you if you want to publish in an education journal or higher education journal in Chile, this is what the editors very much put an emphasis on, or these are topics that are hot. So this is different than in an international journal. So we get to this a little bit more, but you should always remember that there are norms and forms to each kind of written communication, and the norms and forms are most strict in my view in the journal business. So if we then, this is also what was a little bit triggered in the abstract invitation for this. We have I use Santos' 5 modes of knowledge production to make the point a bit more clear, because these are analytical, in my view. These are very analytically helpful categories that he presents. And it also is a good way to show how openness in closed science might be possible or is possible in my view. So as you know, that probably have heard about it during your academic socialization, that that journal articles should be very precise. There should be a rigorous presentation of the content, and it's all about science there, which is actually a bit more of the older ideas, because nowadays it's been, especially with international journals, it's been much more addressing the idea of intersubjectivity, like the old, and there I would agree with the category of Santos, the old publication style was, like I remember when I was starting publishing in English, I got often the feedback, why should an international audience care about what happens in Germany? Because the standard was international audience is UK and US. And whatever they published was international by whatever standard, but this is absurd. So this was something non-UK, non-US, and they have 60, 70, sometimes 80% of the shares of journal articles, that's why they're so high up in the rankings. That's their power model, that's their business model. So that's what was their rigor of knowledge. Nowadays, it's become more intersubjective, but you still need to show, to make people understand that it's rigorous in a way, yeah, that you use the theory right, that you apply the methods right, and that people also can connect to this. Like if you write about the Chilean context and I get an article about the Chilean context, I don't understand it if there's not hypothesis that I can think, okay, I can test that hypothesis in Germany, or I have, oh, that's the theoretical approach to it. So these are issues, or your findings that then I think, oh, this Chilean finding, this doesn't sound to me very particularly Chilean. This could be also in the very different German academic settings. So there are ways that you can make your content and your rigorously presented academic knowledge intersubjective. And also for this, you have to work on making me see, really like see what is it, because otherwise I come with my, like I'm socialized quite different. Like I don't think just because it's a UK paper, like a UK paper, I evaluate the same. So I'm not naturalizing these differences as defined before. Yeah, that UK and US is international. They have the same, to meet the same standards nowadays in many journals that we get to there. So, but still it's still that there is a dominance of that knowledge, because this is the most knowledge that is published. So they still exist as reference categories. So in your state-of-the-art literature review or something, they're still very much present. So this is still, so there's still these implicit aspects to the publication business, but also you should gather and talk with your supervisors or with colleagues that how to make it more intersubjective with knowing these issues, because all in all, the idea and also the goal that is very clear, for instance, in the editorial board and by the owners of Studies in Higher Education, which is the Society for Research into Higher Education of the UK. So we're published by Taylor and Francis, but Studies is owned by a learned society. So they want to contribute to the growth of knowledge. So we want to foster the growth of knowledge, and we want to have the growth of international knowledge. But all in all, it's still, and so there's still a lot of this capitalist logic of production. We have different issues that we have to look for. It has to, like there has to be, the publication has to be paid for, the editing, the printing, and we disagree on these things. I'm not quite sure if we still need paper journals, but it's, for instance, in African authors, if they cannot present the paper version of their article, it does not count for them in many African countries. So we're kind of still stuck on the paper, even though we're in the digital age. So there's this academic capitalism to it as well. We also very much depend on, we need good articles, because there's the competition about journal impact factors. So when we have a high journal impact factor, we get better papers, so we can maintain that status or raise. Studies is not the highest ranked journal in higher education, but we're doing pretty good. But still, we're quite high up. So this gives us visibility. So there are also different models of capitalism in there. So we also have to look like, okay, this article, growth of knowledge, nice. If it's really so good, then by itself, it will be cited, it will be recognized, it will create impact, and then this is good for a journal impact factor. So we have also an ambivalent or double goal that we have to achieve with the openness in close communication. But like to finish this sections, what I want to make clear here is there is still kind of closed business model behind this, but you have to think about, and you also have the opportunities to make others see, like this what Santos mentions with his epistemology of seeing. And so we can also like contribute to making science really a global knowledge growth community, and not just US, UK, or have separate communities where, of course, you publish in Chile and in Spanish, so you have a wider distribution already. Like I also have to sometimes publish in German, and I have a smaller audience there. So, but if we want to have an international contribution or impact, we want to make others, we have to make others see. And it's not that they're waiting for you to do it. You have to actively do it and think about how to make them see. And this is the primary goal of the workshop today. So before I go on, are there some questions so far that you would like to address, or just this was just a little bit the general, and now we get to the like general introduction. Now we get to the thing. Yeah. My problem is that when I'm presenting, I don't see the chat. So I would need to have a sign by Isabel saying that so far there's nothing that I need to look at.
But you can, I think you can put on the chat, can't you?
Yes, but I'm always get stuck.
Okay.
That's.
But there are no questions.
Okay. Okay. So then we continue, and I see sometimes that there are that there's something happening in the chat, but of course I cannot look at it there. So once more back, like make others see is of course like within this idea of academic community and growth of knowledge goal is very strongly related to academic ethics. Like we should be intrinsically motivated, ideally, to then discuss, like present our research findings to the community, and to do this in a specific way, which needs to be respected, that people understand it. Sorry. And of course, we also need to publish to have an academic career, to have a reputation gain. Like when we publish something good, and people come back to you after presentations, or refer to your research in their publications in a positive way. This is contributing to our reputation, and then we might have an academic career. We need to publish a PhD thesis to advance in the academic career. And then of course professors know that to move from assistant to associate to full professor, they regularly have to publish and show that they contribute, that they can convince the academic community of the relevance of their work, and altogether that they are academic professionals. So like publishing is part of our professionalism, not just the ethics, but also the professionalism there. And there we have the tricky issue, like when you publish in Studies in Higher Education, your article gets accepted. You can right away write, I have an article published in Studies in Higher Education. It has an impact factor of 2.8. And there are some more digits to it, I forget. So people know in education, 2.8 is not too bad. It's much higher than the many 0 point something. So this is a good thing right away, but it was probably quite strenuous maybe for you to get in there, and you still don't know what are the reactions to the content, because in academia it can take years. Sometimes, like even for Nobel Prize winners, it took like there was no reaction for 10 to 20 years, and all of a sudden people understood what they were doing, and then they're the hot piece, and then it goes. So you have to wait years, but always these career mechanisms. You cannot wait years until somebody really evaluates academically your research. So this is kind of awkward managerial practice that is affecting our work. But basically, it is like publishing and presenting your research is about sharing thoughts, like also you do on conferences. But of course, there are other options where you do not have to encounter the peer review by your colleagues, where you can also collect ideas much faster, or collect feedback much faster, and just share your thoughts. But it's not so. It's tricky with your academic reputation, but there is quite a number of open science archives. So you can just upload your paper there. There's Archive, Social Sciences Archive. You can Google it, and there's just a paper. And these papers that are uploaded, some of them they're already submitted for peer review with a magazine. So they also get document object identifiers, and you can also modify this in case your paper gets accepted. This is not bad practice anymore, because it used to be like, don't have your papers published prior to submitting it to a journal, but all kinds like Taylor and Francis, Springer, Elsevier, and whatever they called, they have open and archive publishing, or they're allowing it as a preprint. Like, you're not allowed to put the actual article in there, but the article which is equivalent to that, that is published, not layouted, and then of course with the and then change also the document object identifier number, which is then provided by the journal. So you, so even though people read this, they cite the original paper, which is then published with them, which is part of the journal. You know, you remember the thing I said about the journal impact factor? It depends on citations. More citations, higher impact factor. So nowadays it seems that they do double thing. They need to earn the money, but most important currency is citations. So they agreed to these policies, and some of them are quite new, and they are not known to many people. We still also have to educate our reviewers, say this is okay, this is not prior publication. Although we sent them, don't Google for that article, because then double blind is not working anymore once they know who they are. But yeah, you know, humans. And there are also different.
I have a question. So yes. How different does the manuscript have to be if you have it uploaded in one of those? Can it actually be the final, sort of very close to final manuscript, or?
Yes, it's like the word. The wording is that it should be a preprint, and preprint basically refers not layouted in the journal style. So it can be like it used to be earlier, that it had to be the version submitted for review, but now, as everybody who believes in peer review says, after peer review journals, articles are better. So they also want the actual article there, but not layouted. So you can upload your actually final version of the manuscript, just how you send it to the journal for publishing on these archives.
I see. So Isabel is commenting on the chat that ResearchGate is not allowed. So and it seems like I didn't know this, that ResearchGate has a commercial goal then, and commercial websites, I guess, are not allowed, right, Isabel? Yeah. Is that?
That's true. Like Isabel is the expert on this topic. As you know, she does a lot on open science, where open access is one part to it, but that was the smaller part of the presentation. So I got to do that as well. But it has to be one of these archives that are not commercial, because then ResearchGate, people that are not registered in ResearchGate or academia.edu or so, they also close it again, and they do also use that for their business models. So there the publishers are pretty aware to at least have some grip to it, but so that's but this is also nice nowadays that they agree to openly sharing knowledges and still combining it with their business model in this kind, getting citations, because people then are asked, you're also asked to please add, this article is published in Studies in Higher Education site, please the official the official publication in Studies in Higher Education, so it's good for them. So so far, we will see how like in Germany or in Europe, there's a very strong open access policy by the European Commission, like the big money Horizon program, like there are billions of euros in there. It requests that you publish things on open access, for instance. So there's strong pressure. So we're going to see how this goes on. Okay, there was a hand risen. Please unmute and ask.
Okay, hello. My question is about what happens with submitting like an inscription to Creative Commons license. Because, well, you already talked about this, these platforms that could also be used for commercial purposes, such as ResearchGate or other platforms. But for example, if I have my the last version before sending it to peer review to a journal, how do those journals see if I take a license of what I mentioned? I just forgot.
The Creative Commons. Well, this the model at the moment is hybrid. So-called hybrid open access, which means you can have it with a Creative Commons license if you pay for it. So each of these publishers says, okay, if you want to have your article available open access, you have to pay, I don't know, it's 2,000 euros, and there's discount for low-income countries. I don't know how it is for Chile. I didn't look it up. And then your paper is available open access, and I'm sure Isabella's commenting on this more. But then this would be a hybrid open access. So the information is freely available to worldwide downloading. And then there are also different other options or colors of open access. Here you see a bar chart which says, okay, if you put it completely free online, which is or no, publish it in an open access journal. Sorry, it has also just as good citation probability like the traditional journal articles. But here it's also like if you can publish your paper also in an open access journal, which like PLOS ONE or others, the Palgrave Communications or what they're all called. But if you intend to do this, you always should check if your journal is listed in the directory of open access journals, because since the open access movement has occurred, there are many predatory journals. So they're fake journals. They you find them also in higher education. They say, okay, easy way to publish, but this is not, it's not a recognized journal, and it's also a business model. So this causes big problems. So you have to make sure that your journal that you submitted to is listed in the directory. But with like also PLOS ONE, you also have to pay again. And then they have also different fees depending on how rich your country is supposed to be. So you can do that, and there are also education journals. So you can just browse through that directory also to find a suitable journal, just as you can browse with the closed journal there. So this, but here really be careful, but really that list, it's very good, it's accredited, they check regularly, they have the standards, and they kick journals out if they don't comply with the standards also. So you can be sure that you have a good, that your article is well regarded for your career evaluation or whatever you needed, because I'm also thinking that it's very good to openly share knowledge, because the privatization issue is always a tricky issue, as I hinted before.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think there are more in the communication section. To now get to the actual topic of our presentation today, and then especially of the workshop, you see that we're not starting in the beginning. This is the journal publishing cycle, as my colleague, Christiane Rittgeroth has called it. This is also in the PDF that I'm going to send you, so you don't need to hectically write that down. We start at, or we focus really on like the content of the article by looking at the abstract. So when you have an abstract of your paper, you already managed to get through the first 5 steps, and can already be quite happy that you have produced some text. Of course, you then should never ever submit anything anywhere or upload a paper before having somebody else read it. Like, also don't put an article uploaded in an archive without feedback from friends or colleagues. A bad article, bad sharing of knowledge will harm your reputation, and with all communication and openness ideas, don't do it. This can fall back on you, and this is very tricky. So we start at a quite advanced moment of that process. So you should also always think about that, that you, when I talk, that you're in the state of mind, you've achieved something, and you're you have the abstract, and then that's it, what you want to work on further. And the content of the abstract, the content of the article, sorry, of course, most important thing is your article as such. Yeah, but if I, as an editor or a reviewer, or then in the long run of like the reader of your article, reads a title, reads in the abstract and the keyword something that is not presented in the article, you fall through, you won't make it into review, you will fall through review, and nobody will pay attention to your article, because it's separated there. And it's also very important that these three representations of your article's content, these are important, because that's how you first convince the editor, the reviewer, but also the reader. Like, imagine there are thousands of articles produced every year in science. So people Google or do database search for something. So these the keywords, and so these make other people find your research and the content of your research. So this should be very much coherent with the content of your article. That's why I said in the very beginning, the abstract is your article in short. And so what is then presented in an abstract and also presented as content of your paper is, why should the reader care about it? Why should that person that just read only the title of your article should, after reading the abstract, really read your article? Because we have limited time budgets, we have so many other things to do, and there's so much other research out there. You'll find something else. So you need to clearly say what is the motivation, why they should care, what is the thing. It's not that I think it is important, but we have discovered an important issue, blah, 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 so on. So also just then connect this to a problem statement, and then make the main argument of your paper. These are basically the first 2 lines of your, or 2 sentences, maybe 3 sentences. Yeah, just remember, abstract, you get like 200 to 250 words, so you don't have much space. But these are the first important things, because already then, if you haven't convinced the reader to even read on in your abstract, the person will never read your paper and will never cite your paper. So you also should, of course, we have different kinds of papers. Some are very theoretical, so there's no methodology to it, only if they probably have a certain kind of approach to it. You should also always state what are the results. You cannot state all of them. You have to be selective. So find the punch line, the latest, newest, hottest there. And maybe, if you still have space, what does this research knowledge you created add? But this is a little bit of, it depends on also your paper. Like if it's okay, there's this research program and we're still developing on setting how to do research about a certain topic. This is, the implications are very, very important, but then they are already the motivation and the problem statement. Yeah, so, but if you just don't mention, yeah, we've been doing research about employability, and it would be good to have more research about employability due to this. This is nothing you write in the abstract, but you write in the end the conclusion of your paper. So in short, why you did, what you did, why you did it, how you did it, what you found, and what it means. And these are the core questions that your abstract has to answer for the people that read it. And these will also be the questions, we will come back to that in the workshop part, which you should then also focus on when we do the analysis of the abstracts. So in the epistemology of seeing, the abstract, as I mentioned, first has to convince editors of a journal, then the reviewers, and then the international audience. or the national audience there. And this convincing, like here we have very, let's say, content technically related questions. This convincing is also has some implicit sides to it, because like the editor, the reviewer, or the readers, they also have their implicit checklists. So they first, okay, does the topic of the article meet my research interest? Does it fit into the content of the journal? Like with Studies in Higher Education, it's a general journal, so as long as it's higher education, it fits. But if you're very specific, like you do a bibliometric study, you could also go for specific, like scientometrics. There are quite a number of bibliometric studies published in Studies, but you have to see, but you cannot publish a non-bibliometric paper in scientometrics. So you have to be there. Then, of course, quality of the article. Some people look more on theory and the method. Like for me, it's also very important that there's a good analysis and discussion of results, because, sorry, if I get the results presented from Chile, I don't know what they mean. So you need to tell me what they mean. So then I can go, okay, I buy it, I don't buy it, but at least I understand it, what they mean. Yeah, so this is actually not an optional section, and they very often, I send manuscripts regularly back saying, where's the discussion of results or the methodological reflections, and mostly the discussion of results missing means the theoretical discussion is too small, does not exist or non-existent. So, and then we have, of course, the previous questions like, how does it contribute to the growth of knowledge? And will the article possibly be cited? So it's again this double reputation impact factor evaluation that's always done there as well. So when you now publish or submit a manuscript to Studies in Higher Education, you meet first Leo. Leo is the editor-in-chief. As I said, we received last year more than 1,300 submissions. We are all part-time. Like Leo is retired, so he invests more time, but I do this in addition to all the, like I have a full job in Germany, in the university, and I do this in addition. So we need some rules how to deal with these 1,300 papers. And it is also on the Studies of Higher Education website that the article is there, the thing that needs to convince Leo. Leo he gets to go through all these 1,300 articles. He cannot read them. It's impossible. He can read the abstracts, and if the abstract's not convincing, depending on the criteria that I presented to you, you get a desk reject, and then you get an email saying something like, yeah, not suitable for communication, too narrow in theoretical and or methodological approach. If you get such a standard email, you know that you didn't make it very far. This doesn't need to mean that your research is bad. Maybe it's really like, this is all that can be said, but Studies is a general journal, so you could have made it there. Like, as I said, non-bibliometric study in scientometrics, wrong decision. And then if you convince Leo, Leo distributes the papers to one of us four. And we are regionally distributed, like Creso, he's originally from Brazil, he's working in Canada, so this is the Americas side. So if we have papers from there, they most likely go to him, but he also has like content expertise, methodological expertise, and so on. So we have a mixture of regional and distribution and competences, but it doesn't, like, as there are many papers also from South America, I also get papers from South America, depending, like if my methodology knowledge is more more adequate to judge that paper, for instance. So it's a distribution then, and then I read the abstract. If the abstract's not convincing, I read the introduction and maybe have a look at the theory and the discussion conclusion part, but very briefly. Because already then I spent about 10-15 minutes on that article. And if it's convincing, then also write, sorry, I spent 15 to 20 minutes on that article writing because I think I want to be a little bit educational. I give content feedback. So I write 2 to 3 points to the authors why I don't send it into review. And you don't get the standard email, so you know, okay, at least I made a little bit of effort and I wanted to give feedback. So I write 3-4 points, but this is all I can do. Because when the abstract is convincing, I read pretty much all of the paper. I cannot read the entire paper. It will take too much time. You know how much time you take to read your paper, like a paper? And I cannot afford that. I cannot afford more than several hours per week because this is an additional working time for me. Because afterwards, then I need to find suitable reviewers. And this is, I spent even more time finding and convincing suitable reviewers to do reviews because they also have limited time budgets and they ask very frequently. So the reviewer, I send an email to the reviewer. For instance, I look at the, first thing I do is I look at the references, and then I take some people that are in the references, making sure that they have not published with the authors previously, and ask them for a review, and only then I go to the databases to look for suggestions and and then they get an invitation by me and the abstract. If they like, I get so many different things. Like I have two papers on weighing of factors and stuff. I'm okay with quantitative, like multivariate statistics, but weighing of employability issues is really not my cup of tea. So I think it's interesting. So they get the abstract and then they write back, oh, the abstract, that's nothing new. I don't want to do the review. If I get a couple of these, I know, oh, bad choice. I should have desk rejected that. But there again, if it's a good abstract, then the reviewer agrees to do the review and only then downloads your anonymous paper. And then only then that person has the full information. So you see that you've made it, when you're in review or you get feedback from review, you've made it through 3 selection stages. And there the abstract is quite important. And here, Studies is a big journal. Like we publish a couple of 100 articles per year. Nowadays, it was smaller some years back. We publish more than 2,400 pages per year. So this means Studies publishes every month an issue. So we have 10 regular issues and 2 special issues per year. So this is quite a big industry. If you look at, for instance, higher education policy, it's a smaller journal. They get about like 200 submissions a year, and they publish only fewer issues and number of articles. If you go look at, for instance, the sociology of education, it has 4 issues per year and 20 articles per year. So the likeliness that you get in there is very small. So you should also check that. And you also have to be aware that there are also different policies, like research policy or +1. They say, okay, here we have this number of editors and associate editors. These are their topic, their content expertise, methodology expertise. Please pick one of them and send your manuscript right away to them. So you as an author get to pick, like in Studies, you don't get to pick. Leo picks who gets it, and then sometimes I send it back, say, oh, this, I cannot judge that paper, but normally this is more random than compared to that you can pick. And so you have to make people see in many different ways. And this is the implicit knowledge that you have to take, or that somebody has to tell you, from all the explicit things that are written on the website. So, and I'm sure like Veronica and Carolina, and so they're all aware of this, and I hope they also communicate these things, but in everyday academic life, supervising doctoral research, quite often this is just not possible or forgotten, or the least of the problem, because you mostly probably write books anyway. But so this is also something like, also in Germany, more and more people write paper-based dissertations. So it's several published articles that then are given a frame and then submitted as a dissertation, but still the majority is writing a book. But this is also a topic for doctoral education already, and it might be, with the strong competition, impact factor business and so on, for having a career, become even more and more, at least in Germany, I think the number of paper-based dissertations is increasing because of the increasing competition. And this is, of course, the implicit and institutionalized knowledge that people have that do these. So it's tricky. But it's not in all disciplines, and don't do it for qualitative sociology research, for example. They want to have a book. Theory, same. So it's also very disciplinary. So this was like the first part on the very general introduction. I would like to do now another round of questions, and then we will have a break to get some fresh air into the room, eat something, drink something, use baño. So please. Oh, where is it?
I have a comment more than a question, but
okay.
Also
oh, now I'm back. Thank you, sorry. Yes, please, Veronica.
Just to sort of share some of my very frustrating recent experience. I think it's very helpful what you're doing, and it's very useful at any time. And I just wanted to share with you guys what I received recently from one of the editors. I'm not going to say whom, from higher education. So it's exactly what you're pointing out, right? It's and it's something that, regardless of initial efforts and subsequent efforts, because you work on a paper for a long time, still, it's hard to do. So it's my reason for, he says, this is a rejection decision, right, that I got very recently, and says, my reason for reaching this decision is that the focus of the article and methodology appear to be somewhat narrow and country specific in terms of the journal's broad international audience and scope. Yes. Totally Korean-based article, of course, and very recent. This is a 2020 email, and I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying it happens. So we are grateful for all your advice.
Yeah, it happens to me as well. If I say I don't like, I submit it to other journals, so it happens to me as well, and then I think like, oh. So this is also let's say the sport side of it that will never go away.
Oh yeah, you have to be, and I think that's part of the doctoral, what you were saying, doctoral supervision work as well, is sort of experiencing this sort of answers with them, and being able to say, this happens to all of us all the time. Just have to keep going, make it better, take the advice, build it in, and then try again.
Yeah. So I think like, we have had it very interactive. That's quite nice, but we are already quite far ahead. So I would suggest that we do a break now, 15 minutes, and we start at 1:45. Yes, so please leave it on, mute, switch off the camera or whatever, so that you all stay, and then we meet in 15 minutes at 11:45 for the workshop. Okay, see you in a minute.